Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face as he finished checking the mining equipment. The Titan station was hot and noisy, just like every other day. He had been working here for 2 years now, fixing machines and making sure everything ran smoothly. It was not the most exciting job, but it paid well and kept him busy. The warning alarm started screaming through the halls. Jake dropped his tools and ran toward the control room. Red lights flashed everywhere. Other workers were running around, shouting at each other. "What's happening?" Jake asked his supervisor, Carl Watson. "Something crashed into the surface," Carl said, looking at the computer screens. "Looks like a small ship or pod. Could be pirates or worse." Jake looked at the screen. A small metal object was stuck in the rocky surface of the asteroid. Smoke was coming from it. The pod was clearly damaged and might explode at any moment. "We need to check if anyone is inside," Jake said. "Are you crazy?" Carl shook his head. "We don't know what that thing is. Could be dangerous aliens or a bomb. We should wait for the military." But Jake was already walking toward the equipment room. His gut told him someone needed help. He had always been the type to act first and think later. His mother used to say it would get him in trouble someday. Jake put on his spacesuit and checked the air supply. 2 hours of oxygen. That should be enough. He grabbed some basic medical supplies and a plasma cutter in case he needed to break through metal. "Morrison, get back here!" Carl shouted as Jake headed for the airlock. "That's an order!" "Sorry, Carl. Can't hear you through the helmet," Jake lied as he sealed the airlock door. The surface of Titan was dark and cold. Jake's helmet lights cut through the black space as he walked toward the crash site. The pod was bigger than it looked on the screen. It was made of some kind of blue metal that seemed to glow faintly. Strange symbols were carved into the sides. Jake found a crack in the hull and used his plasma cutter to make it bigger. The metal was tough but eventually gave way. He crawled inside the pod. What he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. A girl was lying on the floor, unconscious. But she was not human. Her skin was pale blue like the color of ice. Her hair was silver and seemed to shine in his helmet lights. She looked young, maybe 16 or 17 years old. She was wearing a torn white dress that looked expensive. Jake checked for a pulse. Her heart was beating but very slowly. She was breathing but barely. He could see cuts on her arms and a bad burn on her shoulder. She needed help fast. He carefully lifted her and carried her back to the station. Getting inside without anyone seeing was the hard part. Jake knew a maintenance tunnel that led to an old storage room. No one went there anymore. Jake set up a small bed and brought food, water, and medical supplies. He cleaned her wounds and bandaged them as best he could. The girl's skin felt cold, but he could tell she was alive. For 3 days, she did not wake up. Jake visited her whenever he could sneak away from work. He brought her soup and checked her bandages. He talked to her even though she could not hear him. "I don't know who you are," he said on the 3rd night. "But you're safe now. Nobody will hurt you here." On the 4th day, she opened her eyes. They were bright purple like gems. She looked around the room in fear, then saw Jake sitting nearby. "Please don't be scared," Jake said softly. "I'm Jake. I found you after your ship crashed. You're hurt, but you're going to be okay." The girl tried to speak, but only strange sounds came out. Jake realized she did not speak English. He pointed to himself and said Jake several times. Then he pointed to her and raised his eyebrows. "Lyra," she said in a voice like music. She pointed to herself. "Lyra." Over the next 2 weeks, they learned to communicate. Lyra was very smart and picked up English quickly. Jake learned that she was from a planet very far away. Her people were called the Velthani. They had blue skin and lived much longer than humans. Lyra told him a terrible story. Bad machines had attacked her world. They destroyed everything and killed everyone. Her family had put her in the escape pod and told her to run. She was the only one who got away. "My father was the king," she said with tears in her purple eyes. "My mother was the queen. Now they are gone. Everyone is gone." Jake felt sorry for her. He had lost his parents in a car accident when he was young, so he knew what it felt like to be alone. But losing an entire world was something he could not imagine. "I have to go," Lyra said after 3 weeks. "The bad machines might follow me here. I cannot let them hurt your people too." Jake helped her fix her ship. The pod was small but very advanced. The technology was far beyond anything humans had. Lyra showed him how some of it worked, but most of it was too complicated to understand. "Will I see you again?" Jake asked as she prepared to leave. Lyra took a small device from her pocket. It looked like a crystal that glowed with soft blue light. "This is a beacon," she said. "It will let me find you anywhere in the galaxy. When I am strong enough, when I have the power to help, I will come back." "You don't owe me anything," Jake said. "I just did what anyone would do." Lyra smiled sadly. "No, Jake Morrison. Not anyone would risk their life for a stranger. Not anyone would be kind to something they had never seen before. You saved me when you could have let me die. I will never forget that." She kissed his cheek and climbed into her pod. Jake watched from the window as the small ship lifted off and disappeared into the stars. The next day, Jake went back to work like nothing had happened. When people asked about the crash, he said they had found nothing but wreckage. No one questioned him. Years passed. Jake got promoted and eventually became chief engineer. He sometimes looked up at the stars and wondered if Lyra was still alive. He kept the beacon in his desk drawer, but it never glowed. Sometimes he thought he had dreamed the whole thing. Blue-skinned aliens seemed impossible, but then he would touch the small scar on his hand from when he cut himself on her ship, and he knew it had been real. 10 years went by. Jake almost forgot about the blue girl he had saved. Almost, but not quite. Some memories are too important to forget even when they seem impossible. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness was about to change everything. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Mars Defense Station, looking out at the red planet below. 10 years had passed since his time on Titan. Now he was in charge of protecting one of humanity's most important colonies. The coffee in his cup was getting cold, but Jake did not notice. He was reading reports about strange energy readings at the edge of the solar system. For 3 days, the sensors had been picking up something big moving toward them. "Sir," called Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. "We're getting clearer readings now. You need to see this." Jake walked over to her screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. Massive shapes were moving through space, still far away but getting closer. The computer was trying to count them. "How many ships?" Jake asked. "At least 50, sir. Maybe more. They're huge. Bigger than anything we've ever built." Jake felt his stomach drop. Humanity had made contact with several alien races over the past few years. Most had been friendly, but a few had tried to attack Earth. This looked like the biggest threat yet. "Send a message to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them we have unknown ships approaching, lots of them." The communication officer, Pete Garcia, started sending the emergency signal. Within minutes, every human ship in the solar system was getting ready for battle. Jake watched the alien fleet on the main screen. The ships were beautiful but frightening. They looked like they were made of crystal and light. They moved in perfect formation like dancers in space. "Sir," Amy called out. "The lead ship is sending us a message. They want to talk." "Put it on screen," Jake said. He straightened his uniform and tried to look confident. First contact with a new alien race was always dangerous. The screen flickered and then showed the inside of the alien ship. Jake's heart nearly stopped. A woman was sitting on what looked like a throne made of glowing blue crystal. She had pale blue skin and long silver hair. She was wearing elaborate robes covered in gems and a crown that seemed to be made of starlight itself. But Jake recognized her face. Those purple eyes, that gentle smile. It was impossible, but he knew who she was. "Hello, Jake Morrison of the Titan Station," the woman said in perfect English. Her voice was the same, but deeper and more confident than he remembered. Jake's mouth fell open. "Lyra, I told you I would return when I was strong enough to help," she said. "I am Empress Lyra Thess now. Ruler of the Velthani Empire, I have come to honor my debt to you and to your people. The bridge was completely silent. Everyone was staring at Jake, wondering how their commander knew this alien empress. You're really here? Jake said, still not believing his eyes. I'm here, my friend, but I bring troubling news. We need to talk privately. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all confused and probably scared. Amy, you have the bridge. I'll be in my ready room. Jake's private office was small but comfortable. The screen on his desk showed Lyra's face. She looked older and more serious than the frightened girl he had saved. I have spent 10 years building an empire, Lyra said. 200 worlds now follow me. I did it all for one purpose, to keep a promise to a kind human who saved my life. Lyra, you didn't need to do all that for me, Jake said. I just did what was right. And that is why your people are special, Jake. In all my travels across the galaxy, I have never met another race like humans. You show kindness to strangers. You help people even when it might hurt you. Most species in the galaxy would have left me to die. Jake felt embarrassed. We're not perfect. Humans do plenty of bad things too. Yes, but you also do good things. That is rare. Lyra's expression became serious. But I did not come just to thank you. I came to warn you. The enemy that destroyed my homeworld has found Earth. Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. What enemy? They call themselves the Devourers. They are ancient machines that consume entire civilizations. They turn planets into fuel for their ships and people into data for their computers. They have been hunting humanity for many years. Why? What do they want with us? That is the frightening part, Jake. They usually just destroy and consume. But they have been watching humans for decades. They are planning something different for your people. Jake stood up and started pacing around his small room. How long do we have? 6 months, maybe less. They are gathering the largest fleet they have ever assembled. When they come, they will bring enough ships to block out the sun. Can your empire help us fight them? Lyra smiled for the first time since the conversation started. That is why I am here. I am not offering to protect you, Jake. I am offering to fight beside you, to combine our strengths. What do you mean? My people are very advanced. We have better weapons and shields than humans. But in the past 10 years, I have studied your species carefully. You have something we do not have. What's that? You adapt. You improvise. You solve problems in ways that should not work, but somehow do. My engineers spend months planning every detail. Your engineers fix impossible problems with spare parts and hope. Jake laughed despite the serious situation. That sounds about right. The Devourers have conquered thousands of civilizations because they are predictable. They follow patterns. They think logically, but humans are chaotic, or you do things that make no sense and somehow they work. So you think working together might give us a chance? I think working together might give us the only chance anyone has ever had against the Devourers. Jake thought about what she was saying. It sounded crazy but also hopeful. What do you need from me? I need you to convince your leaders to trust me. I know this is hard to believe. A few hours ago you thought I was dead or imaginary. Now I'm asking you to bet your entire species on an alliance with aliens. Actually, Jake said, it's not that hard to believe. I always knew you would keep your promise. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. You still trust me, after all these years? You could have conquered Earth already if you wanted to. Instead, you came to warn us and ask for our help. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Then you will help me convince your people? Jake nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. But I have one question. What? That little scared girl I found in the crashed pod, is she still in there somewhere? Lyra smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the young refugee he had saved. She is, Jake. She never forgot the human who showed her kindness when she had nothing. Everything I have built, I built to honor that memory. Jake felt a strange mixture of pride and fear. His simple act of helping a stranger had somehow led to this moment. Now the fate of humanity might depend on the friendship that started in a storage room on Titan. "All right then," Jake said. "Let's save the galaxy." Outside his window, the Valthani fleet waited in perfect formation. Soon, human and alien ships would be working together for the first time in history. Jake just hoped it would be enough. 3 weeks had passed since the Valthani fleet arrived at Mars. Jake stood in the largest hangar on the station, watching human and alien engineers work together. It was not going as smoothly as he had hoped. "This is impossible," said Dr. Kevin Walsh, the head of human engineering. He was holding a Valthani energy core that glowed with blue light. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. We can't just plug our weapons into their power systems." Across the room, a tall, blue-skinned Valthani engineer named Zethkar was shaking his head at a human plasma cannon. "This design makes no sense," he said in accented English. "The power flow is chaotic. How does it function at all?" Jake sighed. The two groups had been trying to combine their technologies for weeks. The Valthani had incredible power sources and shields. Humans had weapons that were crude but effective, but making them work together seemed impossible. "Maybe we're thinking about this wrong," said Dr. Lisa Park, a young physicist who had just joined the project. She was looking at both devices with curious eyes. "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Well, we're trying to make their technology work with ours. But what if we made something completely new instead?" Zethkar walked over, interested. "Explain this idea." Lisa picked up some spare parts from a human ship and a Valthani shield generator. "What if we don't try to connect them properly? What if we just jury-rig something?" Dr. Walsh looked horrified. "You can't just tape alien technology together and hope it works?" "Why not?" Lisa asked. "That's how humans solve most problems." Jake grinned. "Show us what you mean." For the next hour, Lisa worked with basic tools and spare parts. She took the Valthani shield generator apart and connected it to a human plasma rifle in ways that made the alien engineers very nervous. "This violates every safety protocol," Zethkar said, but he was watching closely. "Safety protocols are for people who want predictable results," Lisa said as she welded two incompatible pieces together. "Sometimes you need unpredictable results." She finished her work and held up the strange device. It looked like someone had built it in their garage. Wires stuck out in odd places. Parts were held together with metal tape. "This should not function," Zethkar said. "Let's test it," Jake suggested. They set up a target in the testing area. Lisa aimed her improvised weapon and fired. Instead of a normal plasma bolt, the weapon shot out a blast of energy wrapped in a Valthani shield. The blast hit the target and kept going, punching through 3 metal walls before finally stopping. Everyone stared at the hole in the walls. "That should not be possible," Dr. Walsh whispered. "The power output is 5 times higher than either technology should produce alone," Zethkar said, checking his instruments. "How did you know this would work?" Lisa shrugged. "I didn't, I just tried it to see what would happen." Jake felt excitement building in his chest. "Zethkar, how long would it take your people to design something like this properly?" "Months of computer modeling and testing. Maybe a year to ensure it was safe. Lisa did it in an hour with spare parts and guesswork." Zethkar looked troubled. "This is not how engineering should work." "Maybe that's the point," Jake said. "Your people think everything through carefully. You make sure everything is perfect before you try it. But humans just try things to see what happens." Over the next few days, more human engineers started working with Valthani technology. They created weapons that should not have worked, shield systems that broke every rule, and engines that ran on principles that made alien scientists very uncomfortable. Jake was watching one of these experiments when Empress Lyra arrived in the hangar. She had been meeting with Earth's leaders for weeks, trying to convince them to trust her alliance. "How are things going here?" she asked Jake. "See for yourself," Jake said, pointing to a test where human engineer Ben Rodriguez was demonstrating a new ship design. Ben's ship looked like someone had taken a Valthani cruiser and rebuilt it with human spare parts. It had extra weapons bolted onto the sides and a human reactor jury-rigged to power Valthani shields. "This ship should fall apart," Lyra said as she watched it fly. But it doesn't, Jake replied. In fact, it's faster and more powerful than either of our ship designs alone. Lyra watched as the hybrid ship performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. I am beginning to understand what makes humans special. What do you mean? My people, and most species in the galaxy, think very carefully before we act. We plan everything. We make sure we understand how something works before we use it, but humans, we just try stuff and see what happens, Jake finished. Yes. And somehow, it works better than our careful planning. Dr. Amy Carter approached them with a worried expression. She was the station's head scientist and had been studying the data about the Devourers. Jake, I need to show you something, she said. It's about the enemy we're going to face. They went to her laboratory where multiple screens showed information about the Devourers. Amy had been analyzing every piece of data the Velthani had collected over the years. The Devourers are not just machines, Amy said. They used to be organic beings like us. But millions of years ago, they decided that biological life was inefficient. What do you mean? Lyra asked. They replaced their bodies with machines and their brains with computers. They became perfectly logical. They eliminated all chaos, all unpredictability, all emotion. Jake felt a chill. And that made them stronger? In some ways, yes. They became incredibly powerful and organized. But they also lost something important. Amy pulled up a tactical analysis. Look at their battle patterns. The screen showed recordings of Devourer attacks on other worlds. Their ships moved in perfect formations. Their strategies were flawlessly executed. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail. They're predictable, Jake realized. Exactly. Every move they make follows logical patterns. They analyze. Their enemies determine the most efficient attack strategy and execute it perfectly. That's how they've conquered so many civilizations, Lyra said. Most species fight logically too. The Devourers just do it better. But humans don't fight logically, Amy continued. We do crazy things that don't make sense. We take risks that seem stupid. We improvise and adapt in ways that can't be predicted. Jake started to understand. You think that might give us an advantage? I think it might be the only advantage anyone has ever had against them. Lyra looked thoughtful. When I was young, my tutors taught me that chaos was the enemy of order. That randomness was something to be eliminated. But chaos can be useful, Jake said. Sometimes the best solution is one that nobody expects. Amy nodded. The Devourers have conquered thousands of civilizations by being better at logical warfare than anyone else. But they've never faced an enemy that fights illogically. So our plan is to be as chaotic and unpredictable as possible? Jake asked. Our plan is to be human, Amy replied. To do what we do best. Improvise, adapt, and find solutions that shouldn't work but somehow do. Jake looked out the window at the hybrid ships flying patrol around Mars. Human and Velthani crews were working together, creating impossible combinations of technology that broke every rule but worked anyway. You know what? Jake said. I think we might actually have a chance. Lyra smiled. The scared little girl you saved 10 years ago thought humans were special because of their kindness. The Empress I became has learned that humans are special, for many reasons. Let's hope the Devourers think we're special too, Jake said. Special enough to surprise them. In the distance, sensors were detecting new movement at the edge of the solar system. The Devourers were coming ahead of schedule. Soon, humanity's chaotic nature would be put to the ultimate test. The alarm bells rang through every ship in the combined human-Velthani fleet. Jake stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the enemy approach on the main screen. The Devourers had arrived 2 months early, and they brought more ships than anyone had expected. My God, whispered Captain Ben Rodriguez, who was standing next to Jake. How many are there? Dr. Amy Carter checked her instruments. The computer stopped counting at 1,000 ships. There could be twice that many. The Devourer fleet looked like a wall of black metal moving through space. Their ships were huge, geometric shapes, triangles, cubes, and cylinders that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved in perfect formation, like a vast machine made of smaller machines. "All ships, this is Commander Morrison," Jake said into his communication device. "Remember what we practiced. Stay unpredictable. Don't follow any patterns. And whatever you do, don't think too hard about what you're doing." Empress Lyra's voice came through the speakers from her flagship. "My people are ready, Jake. This is the largest battle in Velthani history." "Let's make sure it's not the last one," Jake replied. The battle began when the Devourers fired first. Massive beams of energy shot across space, hitting several human ships. But instead of being destroyed, the ships just shook and kept flying. "Our shields are holding," reported Lisa Park from the engineering station. "The Velthani technology is working perfectly." "Their weapons are powerful, but predictable," said Zethkar, the Velthani engineer who had become Jake's technical advisor. "They are targeting our largest ships first, then our weapons platforms. Very logical." "Good," Jake said. "Let's be illogical." Jake's ship suddenly turned sideways and flew directly at the enemy fleet. This was not a normal battle tactic. Most space battles involved ships staying far apart and shooting at each other. Flying directly at the enemy was considered suicide. The Devourer ships seemed confused. Their weapons tried to track Jake's ship, but they were set up for long-range combat. As Jake got closer, their big guns could not turn fast enough to hit him. "All ships follow the flagship," Jake shouted. "Get in close and cause chaos." Human ships broke formation and scattered in all directions. Some flew upside down. Others spun in circles while shooting. A few ships flew backwards while firing forward. It looked completely random and crazy. The Velthani ships tried to follow the plan, but their movements were still too organized. Their captains had been trained for centuries to fight in orderly formations. "Lyra," Jake called over the radio, "tell your people to stop thinking like soldiers and start thinking like humans." "How do we do that?" Lyra asked. "Do something that makes no sense." On the screen, Jake could see Lyra's flagship suddenly flip over and start flying in a spiral while shooting at random targets. Soon, other Velthani ships were copying the chaotic human tactics. The Devourers had never seen anything like this. Their computer brains were designed to analyze enemy patterns and respond efficiently. But there were no patterns to analyze. Every ship was doing something different and illogical. "It's working," Amy shouted. "Their hit rate is dropping. They can't predict where we'll be next." But the Devourers were learning. Jake could see their ships starting to spread out and fire in wider patterns. They were adapting to the chaos. "We need to change tactics again," Jake said. "Ben, take a team of our fastest ships and try something really crazy." "What do you have in mind?" Ben asked. "Remember when Lisa made that impossible weapon by taping alien tech together? Do the same thing with ship tactics. Combine our strategies in ways that shouldn't work." Ben grinned. "I have an idea. Lisa, can you overload our shields to create a feedback pulse?" "That would damage our own ship," Lisa said. "Perfect. Do it." Ben's team of 6 ships flew straight at a group of Devourer vessels. Just before they collided, Lisa overloaded their shields. The energy feedback created a massive explosion that damaged both human and alien ships. But the human ships were designed to be repaired quickly. The Devourer ships were not. While the enemy vessels tried to run diagnostic checks and repair themselves properly, the human ships just patched the worst holes and kept fighting. "Brilliant," Lyra called over the radio. "We are copying this tactic." Soon, ships from both fleets were using their own weapons and shields in ways they were never designed for. They were creating explosions, electromagnetic pulses, and gravity, distortions that affected everyone nearby. The battle became a chaotic mess of explosions and random maneuvers. It was exactly the kind of fight humans were good at and machines were bad at. But then something terrible happened. The largest Devourer ship, a massive cube the size of a city, moved toward the center of the solar system. It was heading for the sun. "What are they doing?" Amy asked, checking her sensors. "Unknown energy buildup in the enemy flagship," reported the sensor operator. "They're charging some kind of weapon." Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. "Are they targeting Earth?" "No," Amy said, her face going pale. They're targeting the sun itself. The massive devourer ship fired a beam of energy at the sun. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the star began to flicker. The weapon is destabilizing the sun's core, Amy said, her voice shaking. If this continues, the sun will collapse, or explode within weeks. Jake stared at the screen in horror. The devourers were not just trying to conquer humanity. They were trying to destroy the entire solar system. Can we stop it? Jake asked. We would need to destroy their flagship, Lyra said. But it is heavily shielded and defended by hundreds of smaller ships. Then that's what we'll do, Jake said. All ships, new target. We're going after the big one. Jake, that's suicide, Ben said. We can't get through all those defenders. Sure, we can, Jake replied. We just need to do something really, really stupid. Jake looked at his mixed crew of humans and Vilethani. They were all scared, but they trusted him. That gave him an idea. Amy, can you calculate the exact trajectory? We would need to crash into their flagship? Jake, no, Amy said. You're not thinking of ramming them. Actually, I am, but not the way you think. Jake explained his plan. It was crazy, dangerous, and had almost no chance of working. It was also exactly the kind of plan that the Devourers would never expect. That's the most illogical strategy I have ever heard, Zethkar said. Perfect, Jake replied. Let's do it. The combined fleet regrouped and began flying toward the Devourer flagship, but instead of attacking it directly, they were going to try something that had never been attempted in the history of space warfare. Jake just hoped they would live long enough to see if it worked. Behind them, the sun continued to flicker as the Devourer weapon slowly tore it apart. Humanity had perhaps hours to save not just their own species, but their entire solar system. Jake's plan was the craziest thing anyone had ever tried in space combat. Instead of attacking the Devourer flagship directly, the entire combined fleet was going to fly straight at it, and then, at the last second, use their engines to create a massive gravity well. This should collapse our own ships, Zethkar said as he helped Lisa prepare the engine modifications. Probably, Lisa agreed, but it should also collapse theirs. And if we survive the explosion, we might be able to get close enough to plant bombs on their weapon, Ben added. Might, Amy said nervously. There are so many things that could go wrong. That's what makes it perfect, Jake said. The Devourers will spend so much time calculating all the ways this could fail that they won't be able to stop us in time. The fleet flew in a tight formation toward the enemy flagship. Hundreds of Devourer ships moved to intercept them, firing everything they had. Several human and Velthani ships were destroyed, but the rest kept flying. Engines ready, Lisa reported. Everyone needs to fire at exactly the same time, or this won't work. All ships on my mark, Jake said. He watched the distance counter on his screen. They were getting very close to the massive enemy ship. 3, 2, 1, mark. Every ship in the fleet fired their engines in reverse at the same time. The combined thrust created a distortion in space itself. Gravity bent and twisted around them. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Both human and Devourer ships were pulled toward each other by the artificial gravity well. Metal groaned and bent as the ships were crushed together. But Jake's plan worked better than expected. The smaller, more flexible human ships survived the crushing forces. The massive, rigid Devourer ships cracked and broke apart. In the chaos, Jake's ship and a few others managed to get close to the enemy flagship. They landed on its hull like tiny insects on a giant's back. "Boarding teams, go!" Jake shouted. Jake led a mixed group of humans and Velthani into the Devourer ship. The inside was all black metal corridors and humming machines. Everything was perfectly organized and sterile. They fought their way through robotic defenders toward the weapon control center. The Devourers had never expected enemies to get inside their ship, so their internal defenses were not as strong as their outer shields. When they reached the weapon chamber, Jake saw something that made him stop and stare. The weapon was not just a machine. It was powered by the memories and thoughts of all the organic beings the Devourers had consumed over millions of years. They turned entire civilizations into fuel, Amy whispered in horror. No wonder they're so powerful, Lyra said. They're using the life force of trillions of beings. Jake felt anger building inside him. Then we're going to shut it down and set them free. Lisa and Zethkar worked together to plant explosive charges on the weapon's core. But as they worked, something unexpected happened. The stored memories began to communicate with them. Voices from 1,000 dead civilizations whispered through the ship's communication system. They told Jake and his team how to not just destroy the weapon, but how to reverse what it had done to the sun. The weapon can be turned around, Amy said, studying the alien technology with help from the ghostly voices. Instead of destroying the sun, we can use it to make the sun stronger. How long do we have? Jake asked. Minutes, Amy replied. The sun is already starting to collapse. Working with information from the consumed civilizations, Amy and Lisa reprogrammed the weapon. Instead of firing destructive energy at the sun, it began to send stabilizing energy. The sun stopped flickering and began to burn brighter and more steadily than ever before. But their victory came with a price. The reprogrammed weapon overloaded and exploded, taking the Devourer flagship with it. Jake and his team barely escaped in their small shuttle. As they flew away from the explosion, Jake saw something amazing. The destroyed Devourer ships were not just wreckage. The stored memories of the consumed civilizations were being released as pure energy, creating beautiful streams of light across space. They're free, Lyra said softly. All those civilizations the Devourers destroyed, their memories are finally free. The remaining Devourer ships tried to retreat, but something had changed. Without their flagship and its central computer, they could not coordinate their actions. The human and Velthani fleets easily destroyed or captured the confused enemy vessels. 3 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of a new type of space station. It was built using both human and Velthani technology, but designed with human creativity and Velthani precision working together. Lyra joined him at the window. She was no longer wearing her imperial robes. Instead, she wore a simple uniform that combined human and Velthani styles. Are you sure about this? Jake asked. Giving up your empire to create something new? My empire was built to protect one human who showed me kindness, Lyra said. Now I want to build something that protects everyone. They were creating the Terran Velthani Commonwealth, a new type of government where both species shared leadership. Jake had been elected as the first human co-leader, while Lyra would represent the Velthani. How do you think it will work? Jake asked. Humans and aliens trying to run a government together? The same way everything else works when humans are involved, Lyra laughed. It will be chaotic and unpredictable, and somehow it will be exactly what we need. Through the window, they could see children playing in the station's garden. Some had blue skin and some had pink skin, but they all laughed the same way when they played together. Dr. Carter sent me her final report on the Devourer technology, Jake said. She thinks there are more machine intelligences out there, other civilizations that gave up their creativity and emotions to become perfectly logical. Are you worried? Lyra asked. Not really, Jake said. If we learned anything from this war, it's that creativity and chaos are more powerful than perfect logic. And kindness, Lyra added. Do not forget that this all started because you chose to save a stranger. Jake smiled. I still can't believe that helping one scared girl led to all this. Small acts of kindness can change the galaxy, Jake Morrison. I am living proof of that. On the screen in Jake's office, news reports were coming in from across human space. The enhanced sun was providing more energy than ever before. New colonies were being established. Human and Velthani scientists were working together to explore technologies that neither species could have developed alone. But the most important news was something that could not be measured by scientists. For the first time in galactic history, two completely different species were building a civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. What do you think comes next? Jake asked. More challenges, Lyra said. More impossible problems that will require impossible solutions. Good thing we have humans for that, Jake said. And Velthani for that too, now that we have learned to think like humans sometimes. Jake laughed. The galaxy will never be the same. No, Lyra agreed. It will be better. As they watched, a new ship arrived at the station. It was built with the hybrid technology that should not have worked, but did. Its crew was mixed human and Velthani, and they were heading out to explore parts of the galaxy that had never been visited before. Jake thought about the scared blue girl he had found in a crashed pod 10 years ago. He could never have imagined that saving her life would lead to this moment. But maybe that was the point. The best things in life were the ones you could never plan for. Somewhere in the distance, sensors detected strange signals from unexplored regions of space. New challenges were coming, but Jake was not worried. Humanity and their alien friends had learned that the impossible was just another word for something they had not tried yet. The future was going to be chaotic, unpredictable, and absolutely wonderful.